Hey, what's up, everybody? This is my somewhat spoiler review of Cobra Kai Season 4. I'm going to try and keep this a little short. My last video that I uploaded was a little bit longer, so I'm going to try and keep this a little shorter. All I can say is I love this season. I thought it went by so fast. I binged the 10 episodes from Friday nights to, Christmas Eve to, actually, no, all of Christmas Eve. I think I binged it. Yeah, as soon as some episodes came out, 3 a.m. here in Mississauga in Toronto. But I watched a few episodes then I watched the rest. Christmas, New Year's Eve. Anywho, the show just brought more of the same stuff that you love about the other seasons. It is a fun ride. Like, it's a fun ride. My one thing I love about the show, and they do this almost to a fault, is that the people they almost trade back and forth who's a villain or an antagonist and who's a protagonist. They've been doing that the last couple seasons. And the two of the main characters, for example, that I'm going to talk about are Tori and Hawk, or Eli, right? Tori, I mean, she has been a menace, right? She's a menace for a couple seasons. She's scarring Sam. She's done a lot of terrible stuff to her, and she had like crazy eyes. Like the season finale of season 3, she almost looked like she was gonna kill her. Like, that's how bad it looked. But they had introduced in season 3 that she has a pretty crappy home life. Her mom is sick, she's working, and she's trying to take care of her family. So you start to sympathize with her, even though she's doing terrible things. And they kind of doubled down on that with this season when you see that Daniel's wife, she is taking a shine to Tori throughout this season. And even when it comes to the final fight between spoilers. They changed up the tournament. That you see in the trailer, they say, "May God help us all," but really it's because they're changing up the rules in the tournament. So they added, skills and breaking boards and stuff, and patterns or katas, I believe what it's called in karate. But then they also added a female division. So you had a female champion and a male champion, and then on top of that, whoever won the most out of each of those sections becomes the grand champion. Okay, so instead of there just being one fight winner and that's it. Anywho, Tori and Sam, obviously, they're the only two really important female leads. They introduced a couple other girls, at least one other, this gymnast girl who was pretty awesome actually, but they introduced. Anyway, so it comes down to Sam and Tori, and at this point, first of all, Sam has been the worst. Sam and her little brother Anthony, like, what is it with the kids named Anthony in AJ Soprano, Anthony Soprano, the worst character in the show. Anthony LaRusso, the worst character in the show. Couldn't stand this kid. But then at the end, because he's been bullying this other kid. But hold on, back to Sam and Tori. Sam and Tori get in this fight, or not in this fight, but they settle it in the tournament, and Sam has been, at this point, she's been pushing Tori. So the whole time you want Sam to stop because you're starting to sympathize with Tori now. You know what I mean? So it's like, at the end, Tori wins, and she wins rightfully so. There was no dirty aspect to her fight, I believe. There's a part that I'll talk about later. But anyway, and then, Sam's like, I did everything, because throughout this series, the main thing, as you know, by the end of season 3, is that Johnny and Daniel are working together to create a new dojo. And, Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do are working together. But obviously, this is what bugged me. This took too long. They didn't get along. You knew they weren't going to, but you thought they would maybe get over it within a couple episodes. No. They try working together, and then they split up, and they enter the tournament as Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do. And it's like, oh, it was too much of them still fighting. When, like, they know they have a common enemy. They know, finally Daniel at the end, he says to Johnny, he says, look, I'm sorry because, I was blinded. Mr. Miyagi told me to, like, be my own person. That's, like, one lesson he told, is that I would have my own style or whatever. And I should have recognized some of the good of Eagle Fang, is basically what he says. And Johnny says, I'm sorry too, but it takes the whole season to get there. Like, that should have been midway through. So hopefully in season 5, you will finally have them working together. Yeah, because there's a lot in this series where, like I was saying, you're rooting for a character, then you're not rooting for them, and then you're not rooting for one character, then you are rooting for them. And Tori was the big one. And Hawk, for me, was one of my favorites of this season. In season 2 and 3, he was the worst. Him and Tori, they were the worst. He broke Dimitri's arm in the last season. Like, that was pretty horrible. But to be honest, Hawk was probably my favorite of this season. Probably my favorite character. There's a point where, they say at the beginning of this series, of the season, that, neither dojo can fight each other, right? So instead, Miguel kind of tricks Cobra Kai into going into sprinklers at a baseball diamond. So they retaliate with Robbie by cutting off Hawk's mohawk. And so Hawk kind of has, like, an identity crisis, because he's like, I don't know who I am. Which actually is understandable, because he was really hiding behind his new identity as Hawk. Which was fine. I love that. I think that was smart for the character. But I like that he kind of became Eli. And one of my favorite moments of this season was the talk between Dimitri and Eli. Dimitri comes to visit him, and he says, you're my best friend. I don't care if you're Hawk or Eli, or I think he says Cornelius or something. But it was a really nice moment. And he basically convinces Hawk to come back to train, because Hawk didn't want to train. He didn't know who he was, and it was holding him back. And then, his old girlfriend kind of gets back with him. And then, so then it comes down to it. And, like, you knew this was smart for the tournament, because you knew that the final fight, the only way the final fight would have been another Miguel and Robbie fight. Like, those are the two main kids. Hawk is kind of a secondary, but Miguel, who had already had his broken back at the end of season 2, injures himself. He tries to do this flying tornado kick, pulls a muscle, decides he's not going to compete. He gets really hurt, but he doesn't want to come back. And that's when he's fighting Robbie. So by default, Robbie moves to the finals, and he fights Hawk. And you could tell that Robbie could have beat Hawk, and Robbie's jacked. Good Lord, he's jacked. But Hawk ends up winning. And again, it's because he's embracing, he gets the confidence from his girl, but he embraces more of himself. And I liked his journey a lot through this season. I hope he kind of stays on that. So yeah, again, this show, what it does well, but almost to a fault, is changing the way you feel about characters. And I appreciate that. They bring back Terry Silver, who ends up being more the villain. Another spoiler here. He beats up the guy from, I think it was season 2. His name was Stingray or Raymond Stingray. He beats the crap out of him at the beginning of, I think, beginning of the episode or something like that. Or at the end of one episode, he beats the crap out of him, like, just annihilates him. But Ray says, when he finally wakes up in the hospital, he says that it's John Kreese. So John Kreese gets arrested. So I'm kind of like, do not tell me we have to sympathize with Kreese. Look, they did the backstory with him in Vietnam. That was horrifying. You know, him fighting his captain over a snake pit, horrifying, but come on, we don't need any more sympathy. Give us just a clear, sometimes you need to give us a clear villain. And I know that Terry Silver, that's going to be the next one, or he's going to be the main one for season 5. I don't know. I didn't like that, sorry, not that I didn't like, but after Tori wins, because her and Sam, they had the final fight. Tori comes back into the arena or the gym or whatever, and you see that Terry Silver paid off the ref. So obviously she's gonna struggle with, maybe she's not a real champion, or who knows. Like, that's the big one being that fight, but Cobra Kai won everything, right? Anywho, yeah, I kind of rambled on a little bit. I still really enjoyed this season a lot, actually. I don't know if it's one of the best seasons, but it was still a solid and fun watch. You know, Cobra Kai does the whole nostalgia thing perfect. Like, he does it well. If you like the old movies, you'll like this. There are times in this series where you're like, Daniel, you're being annoying. Johnny, you're still being annoying. You know, there are times where you feel like that, but you're still rooting for these guys. You're rooting for them to work together. You're rooting for everybody. Yeah, still a really fun watch. I enjoyed it. I highly recommend this show. It's just, yeah, it's just a good time. It's a fun one. And yeah, I hope you like this review. Please leave your comments down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. And for Mr. Josh Reviews, I am Mr. Josh, and I'll catch you on the next one.